Meeting of the Willits City Council to order for January 13th. Could you all rise and join Holly in the pledge?
Please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Who do we have here?
Councilmember Stranke?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Madrigal?
Yes.
Walensky?
I am here.
Yes, here. Thank you. Our first item this evening is our public communications. This is for items that are not on the agenda. No action will be taken. Be a very limited amount of response because we are limited to what we can talk about, but we're welcome to hear your comments. Try and keep them to 3 minutes or less. And now is your time. Items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anybody who wishes to address the council tonight? Yeah, Bill, come on up.
Thank you. My name is Bill Barksdale. I have two very brief items that I'd like to just mention and put out there. One is, as things move forward with city planning, I would like to see one of the things that's considered is affordable housing, and I would especially like that to be looked at in terms of multifamily housing, and one of those aspects is housing for seniors, but not necessarily exclusively. Condo-type units, so that it's something that people can invest in and own themselves. So if that could be investigated a little bit more with the developer, I would appreciate that to be something that's discussed in the appropriate venue. And the other thing is, as plans move forward for the legalization of marijuana, I'm concerned about the smell of marijuana in town itself. The growing of cannabis, I'm sorry, to be politically correct now. Cannabis is a very aromatic plant, and too many of those plants growing in the proximity that we have in town is disturbing to neighbors. And I would like to see either an extreme limitation for cannabis that's grown in town if it's outdoors. A few plants certainly should be adequate for personal use, or not at all in the city limits. I'm not opposed to cannabis use, and I think it's got great beneficial uses, but I'm just concerned about the intrusion that it has on neighbors because of the high aromatic quality of that plant. Thank you. Those are my 2 points.
Thank you. The other public communications this evening, items not on the agenda. Is that a move I see there, Lenny?
It's a big move. Where's the station? You can take this off my 3 minutes because I won't need it.
I think Bill might want to know that there's an item on our consent calendar regarding the state legislation to whether or not it would preempt local governments from regulating within local areas. So you might be interested in that. It's on the consent calendar.
My name is Lanny Cutler, 35-year resident of Willits. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm here to accept maybe some questions. A few years ago, the FCC opened the possibility of a window for low-power radio stations across the country. It was a once-in-a-lifetime offer. Most of us who looked into it knew once in a lifetime. They were forced to do it. And a number of us at the Grange decided that Willits could use a radio station, a low-power radio station, low power means that it would reach Willits. It will reach 95490, and that's it. So, in anticipation of applying for this FCC license, a number of us at the Grange got together and talked about the possibilities of the Grange sponsoring it. It had to have a 501c3. And we liked the idea, and we worked on it for a year, and it petered out. Just kind of disappeared into the mists. The window opened, and I didn't want to give up. So I applied with the permission of the Grange as the 501 sponsor. And a miracle happened. I got the license. I got a construction permit to build the station, and if it would work, they would grant the license pro forma. It's 100 watts, and since the Grange had sponsored it, I thought, well, we once had a radio station in town, KLLK. It was AM and reached maybe over the hill a couple of miles, didn't go that far. I thought KLLG, Little Lake Grange, would be great. I looked into it. Some cutter in New Orleans belonging to the Coast Guard had that call, but it was in mothballs. So with many phone calls, I got the Coast Guard to give it up. And they granted us KLLG. What you have in front of you is some first thoughts on the possibility that this could happen in town. I'm here just to apprise you of the idea and possibly get questions from you or pointers that I should know about. But this basically tells it all. A radio station that is low power and only reaches 95490 can be like a nervous system for this community, especially when the grid goes down, because 100 watts can be powered by a hand generator, and then battery operated radios, your car radios, when the grid goes down, as we had not too long ago, it can help. About 6 years ago, next door in our community center, you might remember I put together, and Jeff filmed it, a town hall meeting of first responders. We had 13 first responders. I believe Jerry was there. Were you? Okay, well, then your predecessor was there. But we had all the first responders of our community there. And that is what initiated the idea. What happens when communication in this town goes down? What happens if we get off the grid? I thought we needed a nervous system, some way for the town to communicate with itself. And that's what a low-power radio station can do. So right now, I am tomorrow in the Willits in the Willits Weekly, and Friday I'm hoping in the Willits News. A short little blurb to the town will announce this purpose, and maybe we can get a few people to create a team to make this go forward. Other than that, what you have in front of you will give you what it is. I'd love to hear if anything comes off the top of your head as something that I really need to be aware of. We're going to have an antenna. It's going up 90 feet, so I think I'll probably have to talk to city planning and get a permit for that. But other than that, that's what I wanted to tell you guys about, and see sense whether we have your blessings, whether you're interested, whether there's any notes that I should take down now as I start to put together a team. That's it.
Lenny, just a question, and I'm not sure I'm right about this, but the radio antenna, KLLK's, is still up in the valley, isn't it?
It is. Oh, you're thinking about possibly saving some money and using those antennas?
Use that antenna.
I think those antennas are being used by somebody outside of Willits to broadcast a Hispanic radio station. Okay. And that's AM radio, so they're really long wave. Ours is FM, which is short wave. The antenna would barely be seen. It's a 90-foot shaft with an antenna that's about yay long.
Okay, so different structure.
Yeah, we have a frequency, 97.9. they've issued us a frequency.
You might just want to say that you're having a meeting on the 20th at 6:30?
Yes,
Because there are people at home who watch this.
yes,
At the Grange.
indeed. Yes, so on the 20th at 6:30, right after Emmendale Choir, room 10 in the Grange will be our first meeting, and 4 or 5 days later, Sunday at 4:30 in room 10 at the Grange for those who aren't able to make it on Wednesday. But programmers, people who are not interested in being behind a microphone, who just want to help out, who are interested in audio production. But, we can talk to the town in terms of sports, in terms of local news. I'm hoping that, that one of you may, at least a bluegrass hour.
Yeah, you should have that. That's vital to survival.
It looks
But
like
that's
you're-
it. So-
Looks like you're off to a good start. You already have a basic staff.
Basic
Fine.
staff, if you'll notice there, yes.
Very impressive.
Yes, they're,
Well, thank you, Lanny.
Okay.
We'll get the word out, and I'm sure this will precipitate more conversations.
I hope so. Really it's not going to happen unless there's a team. I mean, I can't do it myself. Right now, there is only me. So I'm hoping that this will generate some interest, and we'll see. And if any of you think of some things that I need to be concerned about, just in terms of process, in terms of, applications or things, please let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate it. Anybody else this evening on public communications? Items not on the agenda? Second, third, and last call? Right, so we're going to move up to public matters then, which is a discussion and possible action to approve, number one, the dismissal of the city's claims in the Remco insurance coverage action as part of a proposed settlement agreement between Pepsi and the remaining insurers, and number two, the financial assurance mechanism established and funded by the proposed settlement to complete remediation at the former Remco facility. I'm going to step down on this item, as I have been in the past on items relative to the final disposition of the claims on Remco that are leading to the eventual ability of the owners to sell the property. So in an abundance of caution, I'm just going to step aside and turn this over to Ron, and I shall return when you guys complete your action.
Thank you. So, we have Stuart blocked and we have Jim Lance. Did you want to open it up and sort of lay the groundwork, or Stuart just to get into it?
Well, I would just say that as the title reflects, and as was just read, there are two issues here that we're going to discuss today. First of all, this relates to the conclusion of the insurance litigation that has gone on for about 15 years. And basically, the city joined Pepsi in litigation against Lloyd's of London and other insurers to compel them to pay for the cleanup costs of the remediation of the former Remco site. And that litigation is now finally culminated in a settlement agreement that Stuart is going to discuss and summarize for you. It's our recommendation that the city approve the settlement by agreeing to dismiss the claims that it has arising from that action. And then the second issue relates to the eventual development of the former Remco site. Back in July, the City Council imposed certain conditions to the development and allowing the buildings to remain. One condition was upon the trust that it would do the work to clean up the property to its conclusion until issuance of a no further action letter from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Second, that Pepsi would fund that work. And then third conditions related to the purchasers of the property, the developers, and showing that they had the financial resources to develop the property and that they would do so. We're not going to address that last issue tonight, but we are going to be asking for your approval of the trust's satisfaction of their conditions and the Pepsi's satisfaction of their conditions. Basically, it's the settlement of the insurance litigation that is creating the financial mechanism to complete that further work. And so with that introduction, I'd ask Stuart to give you the details.
So I'm Stuart Block, and as you recall, the environmental counsel to the city with respect to the insurance litigation, with respect to the Remco site. You've had separate outside counsel with respect to the insurance litigation, and his recommendation is provided in the packet with the agenda. So, as Jim explained, 15 years of history, and it's all pretty complicated. It's been laid out in the letters with, I think, an appropriate amount of detail, and I'm going to try to summarize it a little further and address any questions that you may have in connection with the settlement. So the first thing to just be clear about is that this insurance litigation was separate and apart from the city's claim and litigation in federal court against Remco Hydraulics and their successors, who are now Pepsi. The insurance litigation was on a separate track. It was part and parcel and born out of the original litigation when the city sued Remco Hydraulics for cleanup of the Remco facility and the other impacted areas in the vicinity. And the insurance that was available to Remco Hydraulics and its successors was offered up, and there was a judgment issued against the Remco defendants that was then to be enforced, or attempted to be enforced against the insurers, to fund the cleanup of the Remco facility. So in essence, the insurance litigation was to get into the dollars and have sufficient funds in order to perform the cleanup of the facility. There were disputes about what the obligations were from the insurers, and that they've taken 15 years to resolve. A portion of the insurers settled out, and it's a lot of money at stake, I guess that proves. A portion of the insurers, a number of them, settled out in 2013, and there was really no action required of the city in that. But here, there is a settlement between Pepsi and the rest of the insurers that would require, in order to go forward, it would require the city also dismissing its claims. The city wouldn't be a party to the settlement agreement, but it gets certain benefits, which are explained here, with respect to the remediation of the site. And in exchange for that, and to buy their peace, as the defendants are wont to do, the insurers are requesting that the city dismiss its claims with prejudice, meaning this would end the city's claims in the insurance litigation with respect to recovery of insurance dollars. It still has an enforceable consent judgment against Pepsi now, and that would continue and be modified as part of the settlement. But a very short explanation of the settlement would be the insurance funds that the insurers are paying will go into what's called a qualified settlement fund, which is in part a tax structure that protects the settlement dollars from taxes as long as they're used for a specific purpose. And the primary purpose of that is for continued cleanup of the Remco facility. So money goes from the insurers into the qualified settlement fund, and in connection with the settlement, Pepsi is agreeing to continue to use those funds, or to allow those funds, to be dedicated to the Willits Trust, continue its operations until the remediation is complete, the completion of the remedial action plan, which has been approved or submitted to the court for approval, and we expect will be approved. There's a limited amount that would be allocated directly for the cleanup in the first instance. As we'll get into and as explained, it's not all the money that would be available, but the initial amount is about $4.3 million, which would be set aside in the qualified settlement fund specifically for the purpose of completing the remediation. That is a conservative estimate and substantially more than the trust thinks it will take to close out the work that's required to obtain a no further action letter. There has been a lot of work done, as you know. The site can be occupied and used, as you know, There is residual contamination in some of the groundwater that's continuing to be treated to get it back to the cleanup standards that have been set by the court and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The estimate is that that'll take about another 5 years, and that the $4.3 million will be more than sufficient to fund that work. In the event that that's not sufficient, the agreement, part of the settlement agreement, provides that the QSF would use other funds that will be submitted to and held in the QSF fund to allocate and cover some additional costs that will be, to the extent they're required to complete remediation of the Remco facility. And then beyond that, there's another financial instrument to secure the QSF's performance of the obligations that it's taking on to fund the $4.3 million. So if something happens with where the QSF is putting the money, there's somebody backstopping that who will replace the money and is contractually obligated to do so. And then beyond that, which is all good, all the beyond that's, I think, accrue to the benefit of the city. To the extent that those funds are insufficient, Pepsi remains on the hook to fund the remediation that's required pursuant to amendments to the existing consent decree with the court that would be approved and implemented as part of this overall settlement. So I know that's a lot. There's redundancy and a lot of protections built into that. I think it's a very thoughtful approach that provides the city a lot of security, especially at this stage of the remediation where there has been so much work done, and really the stuff left to go is, given the context of everything that the site has been through, the easy part. So if there's questions or specific areas you'd like me to speak to, or things that come out of the packet that you think require some clarification, I'd be happy to talk about that with respect to the settlement before we go on to the other pieces.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that underlining it all, I think this is important to emphasize. Underlining everything is the fact that there is the consent decree and that the work is not completed until the water board and the court says it is. And what this does is sets up the mechanism to make sure that the work will continue to that point and the money will be available to make sure that happens.
That's correct. As the existing consent decree reads, and I think the last modification was in 2006, there was a limited funding period that ends when the court approves the remedial action plan. And part of the impetus for this settlement, and part of what I think accrues to the city's benefit as part of it, is that this does get the funding mechanism to take this cleanup to the end, which is, as you said, the court and the water board finding that no further action is required.
Good. Anybody up here have?
That was basically what I was going to clarify, just that this sort of wraps up this chapter, basically, as far as the insurance litigation and all of that, which is an exciting milestone, really, if we can accomplish this. And that even though it's not clean, it will basically take some more monitoring. I mean, it is able to be occupied, and this will allow us to have in writing the assurances that that will continue to be paid for until it's done.
Correct.
One other thing that I wanted to have clarified is that this in no way obligates the city to approve any particular land use or to agree to have the buildings torn down or stay or whatever. That is still in our court, and this agreement does not affect our overview of that.
Exactly, it doesn't. And really, we've only talked about the insurance portion of it so far, but those do relate to exactly what you were speaking to, which is the other two things that the trust has requested as part of this. The structure and these financial instruments were not accidental. The trust and Pepsi were negotiating these into the overall settlement due to requirements that the city had imposed on both the trust and Pepsi in connection with the transfer of the property, either currently or following remediation. And so with the trust, as Jim mentioned, what the city had required in the January meeting was that the trust acknowledge that it had an obligation to clean up the site until the court and the regional board found there was no further action that was required, and that the trust would do that subject to adequate funding. That was the trust part. And then the council required that Pepsi come forward with a financial assurance mechanism that would effectively and completely fund the remediation work that would be performed by the trust. And so the council for the trust has provided 2 letters to the city. One that says verbatim from the trust what the city had asked it to say, which is we acknowledge that once this proposed consent decree that would be submitted as part of the settlement, once that's entered, that confirms our obligation to perform the work until the court and the regional board say it's done. And the second piece that has been submitted is this overall package with the qualified settlement fund, the financial assurance mechanism, and the amendments to the consent decree, which give the city, that is a party to the consent decree, an enforceable right to make Pepsi perform as it's obligated to, and Pepsi has the rights under these settlement agreements to access all the funds that have been indicated to complete the cleanup. So with that summary, we believe that the trust has met its obligation, or that the city has imposed, that Pepsi, if everything goes forward in the form that it's before you, will have met its obligation. And to be clear, that's separate and apart from the city's request of any future developer to provide its own plan and its own financial assurances, and also separate and apart from the city's decision on future use of the site.
And I think it's also important to point out that this whole process has taken quite a while. And I'm sure there are some people who are wondering, why is it taking so long to go down this road and, come to these decisions? But we found that over the past many months that nothing is simple. And we had to make sure that all of these steps were followed to protect the city and the citizens. The whole thing started with requiring the cleanup, and our major purpose is to make sure that the cleanup does occur to the satisfaction of all the agencies and to the city itself. And the city does, in addition to the water board and the court, the city gets to say whether or not we're satisfied that it's done, correct?
The city's the lead public agency, so we've had a lot of input all the way along the way on the
So it's all this activity over the past many months has been driven by this, to get the job done, make sure we're satisfied, make the city, whole again, and get a property that we can put to productive use again. So even though it took time, it was necessary to get it done right.
And I just want to add, and I had mentioned this to Stuart earlier, that this not only, it's actually, it's about 19 years since 97 when they started this process. And the trust, which is a court-appointed agency to clean up the property, has basically a lot of money has been spent on this project. It's $65 million so far. We don't know what part of that went to attorneys and what part went to actual cleanup and studies. We do know that they've gotten to the point where it is occupiable. But one of my questions to Stuart and to Jim was, this is sort of job security for the trust. What if they blaze through $4 million and say that's not enough or whatever? And so that's why it's really important that we have these backups and assurances. And Pepsi's actually been really quite excellent to deal with. Prior owners of the Remco property have not been as responsive to the city. And I really feel like they've met us halfway. And when we said, we really need this because we want the property redeveloped, we need to get some things in writing so that they've met us every step of the way. So
they have been. They've been.
Hopefully they would put their foot down if they said, oh, you need $20 more million.
Well, just for protection on the overspending issue, the trust every year has to submit a budget. And it will submit a budget that will be reviewed. Pepsi, as I mentioned, is standing behind all this. So if the QSF runs out of money and the additional funds that have been allocated through the settlement to pay for the cleanup are used up, Pepsi has to come in and spend additional dollars to do the work. So the trust every year is going to submit a budget to say, for the following year, this is how much we're spending. Last year, this is how we performed relative to last year's budget. And if Pepsi they submit that to Pepsi, and if there's a dispute on that, there's a dispute resolution process in that, and which could ultimately end up in the court on an expedited procedure before Judge Ilston. So Pepsi has every incentive to at least keep those numbers relatively modest so that they don't end up going into their pocket even further.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Do you want a motion now, or do you want to have?
Well, let's open to the public first, and then we can go for motion. Anybody in the public has anything they'd like to say about this? Bill?
Thank you. My name is Bill Barksdale. I have some questions. Will the city assume any financial or other kind of liability, particularly with California Regional Water Quality Board, if the Remco site is not remediated to the water quality standards? It seems like the overage, other than the $4.3 million, is about $11 million. Is that the sum total of extra funds? Holly mentioned that $65 million has already been spent. What if the $11 million is not adequate, plus the 4.3? And here's a situation where that could happen. If they found some additional conditions that they weren't expecting, and now there's something new that hasn't been contemplated.
So, under the settlement, the city is not taking on any liability for completion of remediation at the site. The city is not an owner of the property who would typically have responsibility, and it didn't pollute the property, so it doesn't have any independent liability. It's not assuming any under the settlement with the insurance carrier. And with respect, just big picture numbers, I think the $65 million that's out there was the total cost of the Remco defendants on this, and there was obviously a lot more than just the cleanup that involved. There were a number of lawsuits, there were other elements to it, and it would be interesting, as has been pointed out, to know exactly how much has been spent on the cleanup, but it is significant. The $11 million is, from our understanding, what's going to be put into the Qualified Settlement Fund in total. We have not seen the entire settlement agreement. There are portions of that are confidential, but we do know that $11-ish million are going in. Beyond that, Pepsi is still a guarantor to complete the cleanup. So if there is work in implementing the additional work that's required, including monitoring wells that find something we hadn't seen before, or a portion of the slab is removed and we find something new, that will require a modification of the remedial action plan, and that will be something that the Pepsi defendants or Pepsi is responsible to complete under the oversight of the court and the water board without city contribution.
Yeah, and under the underlying support for all of this is that the court consent decree that declares in very specific language that the cleanup has to be completed. It has to be approved by the court and by the water board and by the city. And whatever it takes to get it done, it has to get done. There's no limit. Nothing says that Pepsi doesn't have to spend more than a certain amount of money. You know, there's no upper ceiling to this thing. The bottom line is it's got to be done. The job has to be done.
Right.
So I feel very comfortable that we're covered with that.
And I think that's what's such a very positive element of this settlement, is that the revisions to the consent judgment as they will be entered, or as they will be proposed to the court if the city approves it tonight or in the future, is much clearer on the obligations to complete the remediation than the existing consent decree. The financing mechanism is much clearer. It's in fact, there's only a financing mechanism if these amendments are made. And so that's one of the benefits that the city gets out of the settlement.
And just as a side note, this might not have happened if this city council had not required this action being taken back in, I think it was our July meeting?
July 22nd.
I mean, things were going along, but we put these conditions on the trust, on Pepsi, and on the potential developers to provide the city with certain information. So I'm happy that we did this.
It was very direct. The impact of the council's requirements were very direct, and both the trust and Pepsi were aware of them and worked hard to incorporate them into the settlement.
Good, thank you, Stuart. Anybody else in the public? Come back here.
I would move approval of the staff recommendation.
Okay.
As written. It's a detailed, I'll second. It's a highly detailed terminology, so I
Yes,
think
basically
that's wise.
supporting the two things
Yes.
about releasing, stepping back from the claims against insurers and accepting the funding mechanism.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Madrigal?
Yes?
Yes. Okay, we can call Mayor Burton back in again from his exile. Proceed onward. Thank you, Stuart.
I didn't notice her name was perfect. Something so calm, I didn't notice him sitting back there.
Yeah.
Probably getting a recap.
Probably figured you were going through the consent calendar.
Yeah, Ron, maybe you should do the consent calendar.
Why don't we move ahead?
Yeah, why don't you
Tell them that we are all waiting.
lay the law down. We're missing one.
Let's move ahead.
Excusing yourself doesn't mean leaving the country.
Oh, yeah. Last time I see Stuart. Okay,
We're down to consent
move to the
calendar.
consent calendar. We have council minutes and a letter.
I would
On
like
the
to
consent
pull item B.
That doesn't surprise me. I expected
Other
that.
than that, I'll be willing to move approval of the consent calendar.
Move it.
Second
item A.
it.
We have a motion and a second on item A. Any discussion up here? Any discussion in the audience on item A, which are just minutes?
Just,
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stratsky?
Yes.
Strong?
yes.
Madrigal?
Yep.
Weinstein?
Yes.
Maverick?
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about?
I did, just sort of an update, I did see an email, sorry, this item is the letter of support for Assembly Bill 21. I did see an email before I got here tonight saying that it did pass the Senate. Did you see that?
I did.
Or it passed
and
one of them?
And I responded to, our legislative rep for the division is Sarah Rounds, and I asked her, I said, do you still need this letter of support? And she said, yes, it can go to the health, it goes to the health committee. So they would still like this letter of support.
And can I just clarify, sorry, one other thing, can I just clarify that our local ordinances, which, for Bill's information, does not allow growing outside, all those sort of things, all of those are still in place
That's correct.
until otherwise
They would-
determined?
City does not need to take any action by the March 1st deadline. So what this letter really is about is supporting the league's efforts regarding the statewide retention of local control.
Yeah, to clarify a little bit more, I think that, as I understand it, because we already have an ordinance in place, our ordinance would be honored in any case. But if, without this measure 21, Bill 21, other cities would then be precluded from having local ordinances. Is that, so we're not in any jeopardy with our local controls that are already in place, but other communities would have restrictions on whether they could do something different than the statewide.
Right,
Is that
and
correct?
as I said, we don't need to take any action.
Okay.
This is really a way of supporting cities throughout the state and the league's efforts.
I'll move we send a letter of support, supporting Assembly Bill 21.
Second it.
Is there any public input on this item? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stowe?
Yes.
Ms. Strauss?
Yes?
Madrigal?
Yes.
Bernstein?
Yes.
Mayor Burton?
Yes. Right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council may have a right to review that decision by a court. City's adopted 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits 90 days time within agencies that may be judicially challenged. Yes?
I just had one comment on the informational reports, and that is that I would really like to make sure we get updates more frequently from Caltrans on erosion control, given the magnitude of the weather that we're having. I know last year, even without very much rain, we had some fairly significant problems with erosion control and failure of rock walls and stuff like that. And if it's possible, even though it's not city-owned jurisdiction directly, I would love to see a report on the progress on mitigation. I don't know whether Caltrans could provide us with that or not, but I would sure like to see how that's going.
Okay. That request.
So we will recess now as the city council and convene as the planning commission and the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, which was disbanded here a few years ago. And we have one item of business as a discussion and possible action of a resolution to approve the recognized obligation payment schedule for the upcoming year and administrative budget for the period of July 16 through June of 17. So I see, you got a few words on this, or?
This is Susie's item.
Susie's
Give it
item.
over to her.
I see that we have an administrative price tag in there at 80.
Right,
Are they,
that's
That's what's
based
allowed,
on
right?
the last 2 years.
they settled, that's,
Yep.
because I know that when they originally came out, they had a kind of a base fee there that you could charge them.
We could charge more, but we're not spending more.
So, but we can
If
cover
we
that.
spend more, we can charge more.
Well,
We have to support it, though.
Right, yeah, so we can spend, I think it's up to
250, I think.
250,000 a year.
We
We're
tried
doing
hard.
40,000 and we're putting, yeah, everything that we can think.
how long will this
Okay.
successor, there's the bonds that are being paid off, right?
Right, and
The-
those are due to be paid in 2024.
Right.
There's $3 million, 3.6 million left to be paid on those.
Okay.
I'll move we approve the ROPS schedule
And this is our first annual, by the way. We
Instead
just
of-
did
right,
this
instead of the
in
6
Ju-
months.
Right, so we'll still get our money every 6 months, but we're gonna be reporting it annually. So
I-
you won't see
that's
it
nice.
again for a year.
I was wondering, one of the theories behind this is that schools, in theory, would get more money from taxes. Have you heard anecdotally about whether or not that has happened?
No, I have not.
Well,
I
think
still
they're-
approve the schedule.
They almost have to.
So you moved,
Have to.
Yeah.
oh, second.
What's the interest rate on that bond?
5.125. We could certainly refinance it.
Not
refund
saving
it.
us money, though, unfortunately.
But
for the good of the state, we do it for Jerry.
yes, we could do that for Jerry.
I'll talk to them about that.
We are looking into it right now to see how feasible it is.
All right.
And any costs that would be associated would be administrative costs. Right, to refinance.
So I think I heard a motion and a second
second.
on this. Is there any other discussion in the community on this item? Don't hear any up here, so it's good.
Councilmember Shancy?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Madrigal?
Yes.
Yep.
Weinstein? Mayor Murphy?
Yes. So we will now adjourn as the Planning Commission and reconvene as the City Council and move on to City Manager reports and recommendations. And things are moving ahead. Adrian, tell us about Main Street.
Sure. So back in November, we issued the request for proposals for to secure a consultant on the Main Street Corridor Enhancement Plan. This is a project that we were awarded the Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grant in the amount of about $165,000. So in response to that RFP, we received 5 proposals. They were from Communities Design plus Architecture. Did I get that right? Was it CD plus A? Nelson Nygaard, Placeworks, W-Trans, and Wallace Roberts Todd. I have to say all of the proposals were very impressive. A selection committee, which was a subcommittee of the advisory group, was comprised of myself, Rod Wilburn, Allison Purnell from LGC, Local Government Commission, Tatiana Alstrand from Caltrans, Phil Dow from MCOG, and Greta Connie representing the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street Merchants Group. We conducted a very comprehensive review of the 5 proposals based on the following criteria: demonstrated professional skills and credentials of firm and staff in complete streets and green streets, experience and performance working collaboratively with a multidisciplinary team and charrette process, clearly defined approach to performing the scope of work, demonstrated understanding of the project and the Willits community, and any other relevant experience on similar projects. The selection committee, we independently reviewed the proposals for about a 2-week period before we came together and met for 2+ hours to go through each of them and discuss, their strengths and any weaknesses. After a lot of discussion, we placed a heavy emphasis on their coordination with Caltrans and the relinquishment project. Some of the proposals articulated that better than others, but again, I think they were all very qualified firms. Ultimately, we chose Wallace Roberts Todd, WRT, for this project. They're based in San Francisco. They bring extensive experience in Main Street planning, complete streets and green streets with transportation planning and engineering expertise that will be provided by Fair & Peers and GHD. Both of those firms have done work on previous projects with the city. Let's see, the consultant team has worked on projects in communities such as Cloverdale, Sebastopol, Petaluma, Hopland, and they've done traffic studies here in Willits. They will work under a subcontract with LGC, if you recall, from when Allison Purnell was here last. And so there is no contract for you to approve. The subcommittee has done that work as far as making the selection and giving the green light to LGC to execute that contract. So the contract is slated to be in place sometime next week, but the wheels have already been set in motion in terms of scheduling primarily the charrette, which has been slated for the week of April 18th. It's going to be a 4 to 5 day charrette process. Charrette is basically a community workshop process. And so there's been a lot of communication in the advisory group and with the project team, which meets twice a month to move this whole process along. So at this point, we're going to be issuing a media release in the next few days, no later than early next week, with some information to the community about that process. We're trying to secure a location right now to hold that charrette, and we want it to be someplace that's very visible downtown. So we're working on the details right now. We'll get a media release out no later than early next week. Part of that news release is going to be information on a community survey where the public can participate in an online survey to define community priorities. And so we know that pedestrian safety, for example, is a top priority. Results of the survey will be shared with city staff and the designers and engineers to help them understand the most important issues on Main Street. Additionally, we have a willitsmainstreetplan.com website set up to provide the most up-to-date information on the project. So that's where we are with that. Can I vote?
Sure.
Just to clarify, Adrian, you and I were talking about this process, and you had said that someone was surprised to learn that there wasn't a plan. And I think that that's really important to put out there, that this isn't like an already decided, we haven't, secretly decided what we want Main Street to look like. This is going to be a very open and involved process with the community to design, to see what we want, for the relinquished section and really all of Main Street. So there's nothing that's predetermined.
Right. Obviously, there's been a number of previous plans that have taken place for different projects, and some of those plans have not come to fruition in terms of an actual project. So the consultants will definitely be taking a look at those. But this came up in discussion at last week's advisory group meeting. A representative from Frontier Days was there who hadn't attended previously and was attending on behalf of Marcy Berry, and she commented that she came into it believing that a plan had already been determined, and was happy to learn that that had not been the case, that there really is this opportunity coming up for the community to participate and weigh in. So I hope that that's clear to everyone. There will be a lot more information forthcoming. Allison Purnell with Local Government Commission is the partner on the grant application, LGC is, and Allison Purnell is the assigned project manager for that. So she's really taken the lead on this because we have been strapped with city resources. It doesn't always work out that way. If we had had a city planner already on board, it likely would have been the planner that would be taking the lead. But we're very appreciative to have LGC as a partner and have Allison involved in this.
Is the question, is the survey isn't available yet?
Not yet.
But when it is, will that be accessible from the willitsmainstreetplan.com?
It most definitely will.
Okay.
The other thing I think we want to make clear is that this is a city limit to city limit plan.
Mm-hmm. Not just
north of
Not just Highway 20 north. That this will be looking at the whole footprint of the city, but clearly the early action will be on North Main Street. Larry?
I would like to have some discussions at one of the council meetings about the amount of money that the city's going to put forth for this downtown, everything that's happening, and how much money that the city is willing to spend. The people are on some of the committees are starting to wonder that. And also what is happening with the Van Lane projects that are going on. We haven't heard very much about those. And I know that it's, the city must spend the money and then get reimbursed, but they need to kind of know in which direction that they need to go and to get some communications. And to my knowledge, from what they've said, they're still kind of in the dark on that. Thank you.
They being the Van Lane plan?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good question, and I don't know that anybody has the answer to it yet relative to the city's contribution to the...
But it's something that we need to talk about.
Well, we certainly do. I mean, it's going to come up in this budget process, I believe, anyway. We're going to have to either reserve some amount of funds. We certainly cut back on our construction projects, completing the Humboldt Street deal, and we haven't taken on another big project. And I think that there was some, hopefully not overgeneralizing here, that there was some indication that the council was gonna be supportive of making some half-cent sales tax contribution to the project, but we don't know what Caltrans is gonna pay for yet, you know, we don't know.
Estimates.
I'm not sure, we should outline some sort of a planning process that's gonna help us identify what we would expect those, what we're willing to, you know, what we're willing to contribute or what we're gonna be asked to contribute. But I mean, it's a.
I just think
kind of
it's
a-
something that we all should start thinking about.
Well,
and
it absolutely
coming up
is. It's coming
with a
up
meeting.
and, you know, you know, at the same time, we're gonna try and negotiate with our partner in this deal to encourage them to pay for as much as possible. So
I agree.
And I do want to.
We're in an awkward position here.
I do also want to add that I was contacted by a member of the public, unbeknownst to this conversation, about putting in a crosswalk at Monroe, which is by Mariposa Market, and wanting to talk about the traffic flow in that area. And so we can now respond to him like, this is the perfect time to be talking about. If you have a concern or a safety issue that you have seen on Main Street that you want to have addressed, this charrette process is going to be the way to weigh in on that.
Absolutely. I did want to respond to your question about the downtown streets and alleys connectivity study. We had issued that RFP, I don't remember initially when that was. We did not get a response from it initially, so we reissued it in coordination with the Main Street RFP. And of the 5 proposers for Main Street, 4 of them submitted proposals for that, that project. Because that is going to be a direct contract with the city, that will come back to the council, hopefully at the next meeting. So staff has reviewed those proposals and is getting together in the coming days to make a determination and come up with a recommendation for that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Adrian, I'm just, I guess I was a little surprised in reading this that, I mean, the city obviously had, city staff had a major component of selecting this, selecting the contractor for this project or subcontractor for it, but I was kind of surprised that it doesn't take an action of the city to engage these people, that they're, I thought we'd be in, it just
Reasonable
feels kind of
question,
a
and I
little weird.
had asked the question as well with Allison Purnell, and then I floated it with Jim, as, because this was a little bit different in that the contract wasn't directly with us, and so I was curious, what action does the city need to take on this? And the advice or guidance I was given is that this was appropriate. So I probably could have gone either way.
Well, I just think it is, to me, it's that we have the responsibility for the product that comes out of here. And, you know, I mean, I think the public, we're soliciting the public's input and we have an open, but the ball stops here, you know, the buck stops here on this project. And so I think, in my mind's eye, you know, it is us that is going to give the final, you know, the final blessing to whatever this group puts together. Is that correct? Or just people have another impression about that?
That is.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
also the team that reviewed, I have confidence in the team that reviewed.
I do
the
too.
proposals.
I say that, and I don't have any problem with this, but I want to
Yeah.
make clear at the end of this process,
It's our Main Street.
it's our Main Street, and we're going to be the final arbiters of that decision.
Well, the
Or
product
whoever's
they will
on.
produce does come back to city council for approval.
Right, that's all I want to make sure that we haven't
Delegated all
delegated
that.
that responsibility. We welcome the help, but at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that's clear. Do we have any other verbal reports?
Yes. I was pondered what I wanted to cover tonight, and I really wanted to talk about the things that we achieved in 2015. I know that we were all very busy, but we had a number of very notable accomplishments that aren't regularly occurring, whether annual or quarterly or what have you. And so I just wanted to go over them. First of all, a huge one was settling the Brook Trails lawsuit. Completing the water treatment plant improvement project, completing the groundwater treatment plant for an emergency water supply. I think Ron will talk more about that tonight. Replacing the water mains on North Main Street and Della Avenue, both of which were in-house projects. Completing phase 2 of the Humboldt Street and vicinity rehab project. Public Works crew really pushed the boundaries this last year and worked on a number of in-house projects that they typically hadn't done in recent years. REACH began their operations at the airport, and along with that, they and the city settled the lawsuit with Keep the Code. We received the grants for the Main Street Corridor Enhancement Plan project and the Downtown Streets and Connectivity Study. We were involved in this, but certainly this isn't our project. This community saw the opening of the long-anticipated Howard Memorial Hospital. We hired a full-time in-house city planner whose first official day was yesterday. We adopted a near-balanced budget for fiscal year 15-16, which was closer than we had been in years. Adopted a general fund policy. We approved a new franchise agreement with Solid Waste of Willits. We served as the conduit financing agency for the new medical office building. Approved a reorganization plan for greater efficiency with our resources. We approved one recently, a three-year labor contracts with both bargaining units. We haven't had multi-year contracts in some while. Updated the city's records management system, which was quite an undertaking that Kathy spearheaded. We approved a multi-hazard mitigation plan and made a number of security improvements at City Hall. So there's just a few of the things that we accomplished this last year. And so I just wanted to say thank you to city staff for all of your hard work.
Here. It's nice to have it summarized, because it's easy to...
That was impressive.
It's easy to get overwhelmed when we're doing it.
And one of the things that you neglected to mention is that some of these things, the in-house projects, saved quite a bit of money in the budget.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, that's pretty impressive. Nice job, kiddo.
Good, absolutely.
And then I have one more.
Sure.
What was distributed tonight is the council meeting calendar for 2016, which includes...
I don't think I got that.
Yeah.
I think I got it either.
Oh, yeah, that's...
Oh, I thought you passed it out tonight.
No, that's what I asked if you wanted.
Oh, that's what you meant. Okay.
I'm sorry, we will be getting, sorry.
We're going to start meeting on Fridays now.
Right. So this has the council meetings for the year, the regularly scheduled ones, standing committees, which are Revive Ed, Finance, and Water and Wastewater Systems, and then several other miscellaneous entities such as MCOG and LAFCO and MSWAP. And it just, it serves as a scheduling tool, because I know last year we had a number of ad hoc committees, and it was very difficult to actually get the regular standing committees scheduled, which really we're just trying to have quarterly meetings of. So we're going to start out this year with a focus on the standing committees, and when I was first looking at this calendar, I was really tickled to realize that not only do we have Susie for the Finance Committee, but now we have Dusty for Revive Ed, and Scott Herman, and of course Rod with, for Water and Wastewater Systems. So I feel that we'll do a more effective job this year with getting that information to these meetings.
I think you might be missing a council meeting in November. You don't have any.
Oh. November 9th.
See, there's a reason why we haven't gotten our final copy yet.
It'll be in your.
Well, good. That's.
Could I also get a copy? Oh,
Well,
you're at
I'm
home?
just passing it around.
Okay, just commit it to
I'll
memory.
make sure it's each.
Perfect, because then I can have one at my house and one in the binder.
It's your email, I'll print it out.
Good. To include your reports?
Yes.
It is nice to hear a little summary of what we got behind us, huh? Instead
Yeah.
of just what's
The state of the city.
in front of us. Let's go to department recommendations. Anything from the city clerk today?
I just want to let you know that we were able to secure our financing for the last bond at the lower interest rate before the interest rates today.
You
So
were able.
We were able to, so we were able to stick to that schedule and not have an increased rate.
Good.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Anything from legal?
Following up on Bill Barksdale's comment earlier about the odor of marijuana cultivation and our earlier discussion about this topic in the new state legislation, it may be a good time to revisit our ordinance and to see how we want to improve it. And the enforcement mechanism that we have in there was difficult to bring before the courts and get action on this past summer when we attempted to do so. And it might be good to maybe have an ad hoc committee meet and discuss some issues about how the enforcement process could be streamlined. Other issues are that in the new state legislation, the state will be licensing different types of operations, cultivation, transportation, distribution of marijuana. And it's a dual licensing situation. Someone has to get a state license and then they have to get a city permit. And if the city does not have an ordinance that prohibits it, the state can grant a license allowing for distribution of marijuana. And I don't know how the council feels about that, whether there's issues about that, whether you want to allow that, or whether you want to have an ordinance that prohibits distribution and delivery. And there are a number of new model ordinances that are available from the league now from about 6 or 7 cities that have just written brand new ordinances that either regulate or prohibit marijuana cultivation and distribution and delivery and so forth. And you may want to look at those. So it's just a suggestion.
I agree. Are we on the same timeline then, being as we have an ordinance, that we have to have it by March 1st?
No, correct. It's because the city presently has an ordinance on its books that regulates and prohibits marijuana cultivation, we don't have to take action. And our ordinance is valid and survives, that there's no urgency that we come in and modify it. But I'm just suggesting this might be an opportunity. It might be wise now to take a look at it and see if the council still feels the same way that it did years ago when it adopted its current ordinance, or whether there are things that could be improved upon. And as far as the distribution, the state licensing of the distribution and delivery of marijuana, the state, from what I've read, intends to start issuing licenses in January of 2018. And so there's plenty of time to address that issue. And if the city felt strongly about regulating or prohibiting that, it should have an ordinance addressing that before the state starts issuing licenses.
I feel like it is something that we need to address.
Yes.
I just had a
And I
phone
would-
message today asking about
So-
dispensaries.
You know, and it even expands a little beyond that to just the nuisance abatement policy that we have and the procedures that we're using to give John the authority to try and curb the health and safety of properties in town with excessive litter and unsafe conditions. So I think an ad hoc committee would be it's certainly a one-shot deal. I mean, it's a limited scope project, and I would be willing to
Can I clarify, is, when you say distribution, is that dispensaries and things like that? Or is distribution driving?
Driving.
Okay.
So if anybody has an interest
like
of that, they can get to
transportation.
me, and I will put together an ad hoc committee, and we'll jump on that, Jim.
All right.
You might start putting together some of those big new
Sample
existing
ordinances.
sample ordinances
Sure.
and give us a playlist to start with.
All right.
So thank you for bringing that up. Public Safety Chief.
Not much to report, but we did again have a quiet New Year's. We're real grateful for that.
Except for the
And-
gunfire.
Well, I kind of look at that as kind of a yearly thing. As long as it's out in the distance somewhere, I don't agree with it, but, and the fireworks and all that, but
It's getting rid of ammunition, there's a guy.
But we didn't have any violent events inside the city. You know, the bars cleaned out quietly and not a lot of issues there.
I noticed one of the bars was actually closed on New Year's Eve.
Yeah,
A little surprising.
so it was a little mellower than I was expecting. We did put on a couple extra people right after the 2 o'clock hour, just in case, and it really didn't add up to much. So I was grateful for that. You know, it's raining. It's going to continue to rain for the rest of the month. I think just, again, for everybody to keep that in mind and check their gutters, do all the usual safety thing. I mean, we had some high wind last night, and so it's just kind of an ongoing thing. We got our El Nino weather pattern, and so great for the rain, but again, accidents go up, and some safety issues there. So, and if it does flood, please don't drive in the floodwaters. And then the other thing, I kind of want to let you know that we've outfitted every officer with a body-worn camera. And we took a while, because we've actually had them for a while, but what they don't tell you is they eat up a lot of memory, and so we had to build a server. And so we're working through how those are going to work. We have a policy in place, and then have the cameras issued. We did some training with those the other day, and have them up. We'd done some testing with them, because we had to gauge how much memory they were going to use, and it was an eye-opener as to what. And again, there's some retention issues and that we had to keep in mind. That was the whole thing. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve. I know it's not like putting cameras in the vehicles, but it does put the cameras on them. And like anything else, we've issued digital recorders in the past, tape recorders, but it is a mechanical device. Again, there's a human element. Until the day comes that there's some Mission Impossible kind of device out there that it's perfect, that doesn't exist as far as I know. So for now, we've issued the cameras we've issued, and hopefully they work as they're intended to, and they help us out. So.
Right.
Could I add one thing about flood conditions for driving? And that is, I've been told not to use cruise control when there's a lot of water on the road, because your tires think it means you're going to, what is it?
Like you feel like it needs to speed up?
Yeah, it starts gunning your engine because it's on cruise control. Anyway, but that's what I've been told is a good idea not to use cruise control when there's.
Well, chances are when it's flooding like that, you want to decrease your speed.
That's true.
You want to be careful. I kind of look at cruise control as something I put on I-5 when I'm on the long drive.
It
but,
wouldn't really relate to in the city anyway.
well, but you know, if it's raining really bad and you're driving between here and Ukiah, there's a stretch where you might be tempted to use it. But if it's raining, the wind is up, you probably want to be both hands, you know, all the kind of stuff that your mom told you to do before you headed out in your car. Both hands on the steering wheel, eyes on the road, and no distractions. So.
Good. Dusty, Good evening. Welcome to Willits. Full time.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, council members, Dusty Dooley, your new city planner. Yeah. Very excited about that, and I'll just start by saying that your staff has been extremely nice in helping me settle into my new job. This is officially day 2. Folks seem genuinely excited for me to come on board and join Team Willits. Certainly, there's a lot of work to do. There's a number of current planning projects that staff is processing. There's a number of projects that staff is talking to folks about that might be coming down the pipeline. I was able to talk to our city manager yesterday and came to understand that I will be helping facilitate the housing element update for the city. This would be an opportunity to talk about senior housing needs and how to fill that gap if we have one. As Adrian mentioned, I will be staffing your revitalization and economic development committee. Also, I will be obviously participating in the downtown planning process. I've worked with Ms. Purnell before and look forward to doing so again. And yeah, so anyways, glad to be here.
Well, welcome on board.
Thank you.
I think we have some, we're, of course, communities are always at crossroads. You can use crossroads. It's a wonderful thing. You can use it any time. It works. But we have we have some things going on here that are big changes for the city coming up this year, and I think it's just really really important to have someone that is manning the planning facilities full time, because how we adapt to this is going to really show for years to come of how the city adapts to this new environment. So
I recognize that it's an exciting
it
time
should be
for
fun.
the city, and
we want to
some important things coming up for going in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dusty. Rod, you back there? Public Works and Engineering.
Good evening. Well, as Adrian pointed out, it was a busy year. It was a busy end of the year for Public Works and Water and Sewer and Engineering as well. On the engineering side, we're bringing the Main Street water line replacement, phase 3. We're expecting to bring that to council at the next meeting for approval. And that's our target date for advertisements, March 9th, and we're expecting to start construction on June 1st. There's a couple things. Well, right now we've done some additional soils testing along the route there to figure out if we can use PVC rather than ductile iron, which would be a huge cost savings. Our preliminary report seems to makes us think that that's a reasonable and viable option. So that may push us back to not next meeting, but the first meeting in February when this comes forward. Jeremy's also started working on West Mendocino on just a conceptual plan to fix up that sidewalk issue at Rexall. So we're just looking at the block from Main Street to School Street and discussing some one-way options that we think would be potentially a good idea. I know that's just discussion at this point.
I think I'll miss that meeting.
Well, we have.
No,
I know we have Wood Street that goes one way in either direction, which is not the norm for sure. So that'll all be, maybe that'll be
attention to it.
Figured out as part of this, these two projects we have coming up, the two planning projects. On the water side, the reservoir's filled right before Christmas, minus the flashboards Centennial, so we're at about 1,150 acre feet. So we decided to start flushing. We started flushing the lines on Monday. That'll take probably 6 weeks. We're gonna mix in the 3 million gallon tank repair, so we'll put the pause on the flushing. And the other really big news on the water side is we got the verbal okay to put the groundwater treatment plant into production, and we opened up the valves, and with our one Elias well, we were able to get 360 gallons per minute into the system from the one well, which is about 50% of our production our demand right now. So it was a big sigh of relief because we opened the valves and it actually went out of the plant into the system. So it's very exciting. And I think, Andrea's out right now for a short time, but a lot of credit should be given to Andrea for seeing that project through. She was texting me to see if we had gotten the okay and actually turned it on, and was very excited. She was excited that the project's finally done.
While she's on her maternity leave.
Yeah.
Let's congratulate her.
Yeah.
Is she drinking water on that?
Rod, I have a question on that. Are we allowed to use any of that water, given that it's only approved for emergency use at this point?
That's a good question. We're supposed to be able to use it 25 days out of the year. And I'd have to go back and revisit the NOE and talk to Dusty about that. But we want to talk about getting the CEQA documents done for at least the one well, so that we can use it for full-time.
As needed.
Yeah. It would
So
be
you're saying-
beneficial. It would be beneficial to our system.
You're,
as a
do
whole.
I understand what you said, that we are licensed to use it 25 days a year? I thought it was hooked into an emergency declaration.
The notice of exemption was filed, and I'd have to go look at that. I'm not real familiar with what exactly that entails. The permit from the state is for full-time production.
Oh.
Permit from the state, from the Division of Drinking Water, is you're permitted to use this groundwater treatment plant. In this one well, we're permitted for the one well, Elias well. And they permit for full-time production. We don't have the actual permit yet, but we don't have the actual permit for the surface water treatment plant yet either.
So where does the emergency water supply aspect come into this? I mean, I thought that's what the whole thing, that's why we had to go through CEQA.
So
Because this was only licensed for emergency water use.
That's correct. And we will have to go through the CEQA process. The Water Board has permitted it for full-time use, but we need to go through this other process to get beyond emergency use. I think opening the valve is just part of making sure it's working. We're not planning to have it.
Yeah, we're still working
Right.
out
I was
the,
just testing.
Right. And the 25 days limitation, that's all part of the emergency.
Okay.
They basically have determined that we shouldn't have to use it beyond 25 days in an emergency.
Gotcha.
If we had an occasion where we needed to, a severe drought again, we would have to get an extension or a waiver of some sort from them on that.
So for right now, it's still considered an emergency, strictly emergency water system.
Yes.
So going through the CEQA process will be sometime this year, probably?
I think that we're looking at that for next fiscal year.
Okay.
So 16,
depends on
17.
depends on the project.
I mean, you have to use the system periodically just to,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't do any good to have an emergency water system that you haven't turned on for 2
Right.
years, because you don't need it. You need to
To know it
run
works.
that thing on a
Right. Our
regular
chemicals have
basis
shelf lives, and
to keep it working. So I mean, I think those are, all have got to be somewhat soft numbers, because I think you'd have to turn it on 25 times a year just to make sure it works.
so, all positive. On the sewer side, we installed the meters. Meter installation was completed at the plant. The new meter was installed at at the Mill Creek meter, that was done in November. The meters at the plant were done in December. The telemetry unit to give us real-time data was installed, completed on December 31st. So
Way to go.
Deadline, and all that's available for Brook Trails and for the city. So satisfied that requirement. And I think it's important to point out that the majority of that work was done in-house as well. And it was a pretty sizable project for them to get the manholes in and get the structures in and get the meters installed. And but overall, we'll get some good information.
Very good.
Real quickly, on the public works side, it's been storm cleanup, storm control, and they've been helping out with flushing and helping out wherever they can. And we're fully staffed, finally. And I think you might see a lot more work happening. They seem to have a good attitude and be doing really well. So.
On that note, I received a number of compliments of folks during the storm. I think you said Bill was out there. Some residents have said that they were thankful that city folks helped them with one thing or another.
Right. Some people don't seem to understand what we can control and what we can't, and what's our responsibility. But we've been working through that, and the public works crew fixed the drainage problem at Meadowwood and West Mendocino towards the end of November there, and it's been a long time liability issue, and they did a really good job, and it's been working really well. So if you happen to drive by and see the new head wall made out of those precast blocks, and there's a couple different pipes in there, reconfiguration of the storm drain that's working out really well. So
Good. Thanks, Ron.
thank you.
You have code enforcement that you didn't call.
Thank you.
Okay, we have our community development.
Community development. Sure, sorry, John. I was so starstruck with our new city planner.
Good evening. Code enforcement is pretty quiet right now. Everybody seems to have pulled in and things are quiet. Same thing in building. We're experiencing the usual January, February low point. That being said, the year-end numbers look pretty good. We're up and we're staying up, so that looks good. And then we have a project that is sort of out of the public view at this point at the corner of Bechtel Road and East Hill. The old AM&D building is being repurposed inside. The project's about 50% complete now, and they're just about to start fire sprinkler system for the entire building. Looking forward to it, about another month, and they're going to start production there. I'm really excited to see what 3D printing with exotic metals actually looks like. It's hard for me to imagine. So, but they're pouring a ton of resources into that place. So.
And the Hill Creek buildings are still continuing. I mean, that subdivision, houses keep going up.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
In fact,
Maybe
we're
10 lots left, I think.
Yeah.
starting to wonder where the lots went, you know.
Yeah.
It's looking like a more complete subdivision now.
Traffic is getting difficult there, though. We have to,
Oh, yeah,
have
you
to
know,
do something.
if you're at the crossroads.
Yeah, right.
Things are going well.
Good.
And I'm looking forward to it. I've talked with a lot of people about potential projects that are coming up, and it seems like there's a lot of interest, and maybe we can get some economic development out of this.
I just have a question about your building activity report, that it's, for this fiscal year, total has been twice what it was last year. How much of that was just like the hospital and the medical?
Probably a lot.
A lot of it.
Okay.
A lot of it.
So-
That medical office building was very, very expensive.
So with that exception, it's probably more typical.
Yeah, and on the medical office building, we're probably about a week away from a final inspection, complete certificate of occupancy there. Just, we need to complete some landscaping issues and some safety issues that had to be added to the project after the fact. But we get those taken care of, and it's gonna open. And
Yeah, no, they're stocking staff in it now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is anything else?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda.
FEMA and the community meeting, right?
Yeah, the 19th. We're gonna have a meeting here,
Speaking of flooding,
5 to 7:30. We're gonna have 5 different people from FEMA and the insurance industry here to answer questions.
what was that, the 19th?
January 19th, 5 to 7:30 here.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask people to go on our website, thecityofwillits.com, and bring up the maps and take a look at your property, even if you don't think you would be, take a look. There have been a lot of changes there. And the reason for this public meeting is for FEMA to get the input of the community. They're not infallible. They want to know, have we made any mistakes? Do we need to make any changes? We're still about a year away from adopting these maps, but there's an adjustment period, and it's time to get to it.
5 to 7:30.
Yeah, I would just say the same. I mean, I would just emphasize that it is very important that if you look as a property owner and see how you're reflected in those maps, and you should make every effort to determine whether you think it's appropriate or not.
And
Exactly.
including beyond city limits as well.
Well, those people haven't go to.
Yeah, the preliminary maps actually are maps for the entire county. But we're only dealing with the map panels that are included in the city limits.
But if someone in the valley.
The county, the other cities in the county, they'll all have their own programs.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to council and committee reports, MCOG,
MCOG will not meet until February.
okay, LAFCO,
LAFCO met. Jerry Ward is now the chair, and I am vice chair.
oh,
We did an updated procedures that people have been working on for a while, and that includes a $50 a meeting stipend for the district representatives and the public representatives. City and supervisors are left out. I advocated that the city council members be included in that, but it didn't go for it.
okay. MTA,
MTA is going to meet in 2 weeks from tomorrow, and they met in December, and the sort of important news is that Dan Baxter has left as general manager, and Bruce Richard, who's the former general manager, is acting interim general manager, and there's a search going on. So if anyone's interested in becoming general manager of MTA, the job opening is being advertised now. It'll be about a 4-month process.
Did Dan retire?
Kind
so, Holly, just let me back up a second. On LAFCO,
Yeah.
are those new positions? Was Jerry and you, were you and Jerry previously chair and vice chair?
No, it's like this,
Yeah, but these are new assignments, this.
Jerry did a temporary stint, I think like a few months. There was a weird overlap.
Okay.
Previous, I think it was Oh, Richard Shoemaker, that's why. Richard Shoemaker left to go manage City of Point Arena.
Okay. That's, MSWA?
Beats in 2 weeks.
League? Anything new with the league?
League, I just wanted to give you guys an early heads up. Their first meeting is in February 26th, and we are hosting here in Willits. Staff has been in touch with them. Hopefully, we're going to be able to highlight the new hospital in some way, and it's a chance that we get to show off our town to other leaders around the North State. So that's February 26th, and so you guys will all be invited to dinner for that.
Good. Water and wastewater has not met. Revite Ed?
Has not met, but I have received a request to see about joining it from a member of the public. And I don't know if we have a full roster or not. I know Mr. Woodhouse is on it, Tim King, Denny Shaw, but it might be worthwhile to look at our roster and make sure that everyone is still committed to serving. Because I believe that's an appointment process. It is.
I'll get to Dusty on that. Finance Committee, not met. Ad hoc committees,
No.
I don't think so. I think it's been quiet over the holidays.
I have a report from EDFC. Add that there.
I'm certainly not doing a very good job of reading here, am I?
Well, it's other committees.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the Economic Development Finance Committee is meeting tomorrow, and that's at 2 o'clock at at their new office, which is sort of kitty corner from the Methodist Church in Ukiah, the two-story building that's at the corner of that property. So that will be, as usual, an interesting meeting. And sort of along that line, EDFC is at about 75% of the funds needed to launch this direct public offering, which will then finance the new wool mill. That is a very exciting new project for economic development in our county. So we need people who are interested in local investing. So on the 24th, which is a week from Sunday, at 4 o'clock at the library here in Willits, is another informational meeting for people in our area who are interested in the possibility of investing to find out more about it, both what the investment is about, but also particularly about the wool mill project. Matt Gilbert will be there, who's the proponent of that project, and John Curry to answer questions about what your investment means and all of that. It's a great opportunity. So, I have, this is the poster for it, and if anybody wants a little reminder thing about the meeting on the 24th, you can take one of those.
Okay.
There's one other committee.
Good. Can't have
The
too
museum,
many.
the Museum Advisory Board met on Monday, and I'm the city representative to that. And just the only thing I think that's important to announce is on March 11th will be the first debut of this year's Museum Roadshow here in Willits, March 11th over there at the high school auditorium. And we're the debut one, and then they go all over the county. There's a lot going on at the museum. It's both the physical plant and the displays and all that stuff. So if you want more information, let me know.
The Museum Roadshow is excellent. If people get, I was surprised how good it was, actually.
Me too.
Last time.
Any other committee reports? By golly, I'm gonna not move until I get 30 seconds of silence here. Okay, council member reports and recommendations. In your packets, a list of the mayor's appointments, and I need to make one adjustment to this, and that was missed in the translation, but under water and wastewater, Larry, you've got plenty of, I'm gonna put Ron on that. Ron wants to work on some water issues, and I'll give this year a chance to look at that stuff, so. We will. Other than that, is everybody happy or satisfied or tolerable with their appointments? Okay.
Tolerable.
Do we have any other council member reports and recommendations?
I missed the last, I missed the last meeting in November, or I missed a meeting.
First in
And
December.
December, thank you. And in reading the minutes, I saw that the 3 million gallon tank liner was in there, and I just want to say that I'm super excited about that project. It's been on the books for a while, and it's kind of like the city accomplishments of 2015. It's really nice to see these things getting addressed.
Yeah. Get her done.
Yeah.
No, we were excited about it as well. Any good and welfare this evening? I have one item in good and welfare that might remind you of one more time. This month, one of our annual fundraisers for Rotary is a bluegrass show we do periodically, and that will be the 30th of this month at the Grange with a nationally touring bluegrass group they're all out of Nashville, I guess, even if they're not, they say they are. They might be from Georgia, but they're still from, so anyway, look for posters and tickets in town at JD Red House and also at Willits Furniture, and I've got them, and Rotarians will have them. It is the major fundraiser for high school scholarships that the Rotary Club generally provides somewhere between 10 and 15 high school scholarships worth $1,000 a piece. So usually it's a fun program. It should be a fun evening, but it's also it's a lot of fun to meet the high school graduates and interview them for this and get a sense of enthusiasm for the life, and its possibilities that some of us might get somewhat immune to otherwise.
That reminds me that on the 16th at the Grange, there's a country western
That's true, there
dance,
is.
and that's a fundraiser for the food bank.
Daily food bank.
And it should be another fun
Yeah.
evening.
And I've got another thing.
Okay.
And spaghetti feed too, I think.
On Tuesday the 19th, which is the same day as the flood map meeting, at 2 o'clock, the Board of Soups and the Retirement Board are having a joint meeting. If you're at all concerned about unfunded pension liability in Mendocino County and how that might affect us, that is the meeting to go to. So that's the 19th at 2.
That'll dissipate all your fears.
It'll solve all the problems.
Okay, we took care of the closed session, any closed session thing, so I think I could entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.